Israel from 1967 shows a combination of Premier Kosygin arriving to speak at the United Nations against Israel, President Johnson talking on behalf of Israel, and finally, the Israelis destroying the barriers in the city of Jerusalem between the old and new city.
A special session of the UN General Assembly brings Kremlin leaders to New York. Number one Soviet visitor, Premier Alexei Kosygin. It's his first visit to the United States and one of the most important diplomatic missions of his 2.5 years in office. He comes to state Russia's position on the Middle East crisis. Tight security is maintained. At the United Nations, the opening session is also attended by Kosygin's daughter, Lyudmila Givishani, and her husband. She recently accompanied her father on trips to England and France. Premier Kosygin, with Foreign Minister Gromyko, gave no answer to a U.S. declaration that all proposals for peace in the Middle East be debated, not simply the Russian request that Israel should be condemned as an aggressor. The General Assembly witnesses no Khrushchev-like shoe-pounding nor arm-waving by the Soviet premier, but he condemns the United States for allegedly encouraging Israel to make war against the Arabs. He demands troop withdrawal and the return of all captured territory. Israeli Foreign Minister Eban eloquently counters with an identical charge, blaming Russia for urging the Arabs to attack Israel. UN observers called Kosygin's address milder than anticipated. The day before, at Camp David, Maryland, Australian Prime Minister Harold Holt with Mrs. Holt meets with President Johnson. Mr. Johnson, in a major foreign policy speech the same day Kosygin addressed the UN, calls for Israeli-Arab negotiated peace with world cooperation. He adds his willingness to meet with Mr. Kosygin if talks include Vietnam. While the world's diplomats discuss the post-war Middle East, dramatic changes take place in the old city of Jerusalem. A 19-year-old barrier dividing the city is demolished by the victorious Israelis. The wall had separated the Jewish and Arab sections of the Holy City, part of which was Jordan territory, inaccessible to Israeli citizens. Another dramatic aftermath of the conflict is the pilgrimage of Orthodox Jews to the Wailing Wall, all that remains of the Second Temple of Solomon. Some 100,000 pilgrims made the joyous trip for the Feast of Pentecost or Shavuot, religious rejoicing in the wake of victory on the battlefield.